Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I am Richard Dugan, your host, and we have a very special guest on the program today. His name is Scott Grace, and we are going to talk about the latest work that he is putting out for us to understand ourselves as individuals, but more importantly, as men. Mindful Masculinity. I want to thank you so much, Scott, for being with us here on the program. It's a pleasure to have this conversation.
Thank you. It's great to be here. But when you say that I'm a very special guest, have you ever said anything different about your guests? Like, here's a kind of nice guy, but a little boring guest. Have you
Never.
ever?
I've always
Never.
said that
It's
because
very special.
every guest is special because they bring something new to our smorgasbord table. That's what we have. This etheric smorgasbord table where you're going to take all of these ideas you have that you're going to share with us, and we're going to place them on this table for people to come and partake. And now some people may not like it, so they may not partake today or tomorrow, but they'll try other stuff that will sort of start to open them up a little bit more and then say, that stuff that Richard was talking with Scott Grace about mindful masculinity, that sounds interesting. I think I'm going to check into that. All right, let's take a bite of that and see how that goes. So that's really where we're coming from in terms of sharing these different ideas. And we're very excited about our opportunity to talk to you because you, as well as I, know about this whole conversation that there are those who like to say these things about what is called, oh, I even hate to say it, toxic masculinity. And I was like, uh, does it have something to do with machismo? The tough macho guy that's, my dad was not a big macho kind of guy, but he was a man. He was a man who had a family and he took care of us. He took care of his wife, his house and his car and the car and all of those types of things, and took us on vacations where we all together had a great time. And that, to me, that's, and he'd never put other people down that I can recall, you know. As my sisters said at his memorial, he was the most honest man I ever knew. What do you think about I'm even going to say diametrically opposed concepts of the toxic masculinity versus the mindful masculinity?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, the term toxic masculinity is usually used by people, sometimes women, sometimes men, who have experienced the shadow side. In other words,
Mm.
your father was exceptional. You know, he combined his masculinity with his heart. And a lot of men are wounded, and rightly so. And one of the defense mechanisms of wound can be uh, hiding and trembling in the dark and feeling unworthy. The other side of the wound can be expressed as, I'm the king of the world, or I'm not going to cry a tear. I'm never going to let people get so close to me that I can grieve if they break my heart. So that's macho, where you think that strength is in not being vulnerable, not showing your feelings, not even being aware of your feelings. And those men are in a desert. They don't know what giving and receiving love can do for them.
Hmm. The media tends to stereotype couples in particular, where the male is usually kind of the doofus, and the woman supposedly is in control. And usually there's the grappling. One is trying to get one up on the other. I never saw that with my parents. I remember the interview that I had with them in 2015. My goodness, 10 years ago, on this program, where my mother basically said that she supported my father's dreams and aspirations as he supported hers. And then she summed it up by saying, and I know that he has my back and I have his. Do you, can we speak maybe in general percentages? How many couples do you think actually might live that way as opposed to the other stereotypical way of um, trying to stay one up on the other, keeping score, you might say?
Yes, I would like to redirect to like any good politician to not really answer the question.
Okay.
So because first of all, statistics are in my head are useless,
Hmm.
and second of all, what I'd like to talk to is the solutions,
Okay.
becoming aware, and how for those people who are willing to have better relationships and understand themselves more, let's speak to those people and inspire them to go deeper.
Then let's talk about that
So
from the way, getting away from the stereotypes, getting away from the statistics,
yeah,
and
yeah.
becoming uh, more male. Now, by the way, folks, this book, which is Mindful Masculinity, it's a book for men and the women who love them. And that's another area we'll get into as well. And again, I'll do my utmost to keep it on that positive vein. But what are some of the suggestions that you have for a man maintaining his, not just his maleness, because there's something a little different between the maleness and the masculinity and the self. Um, and the best way I can put that into context, when I was going through some certain challenges a few years back, a lot of the people in my network, they always reminded me, Richard, you have to make sure to take care of yourself, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. So, how do we do that? How do we take care of ourselves as men?
Well, I imagine it's a little different for each person.
Hmm.
That's why these kinds of questions are hard for me to answer, because we're all unique snowflakes. For one man, taking care of himself means getting his butt out of the bed,
Hmm.
hitting the gym, even if he doesn't feel like it. Another man who's rather addicted to constant exercise might wake up and his best self-care would be to stay in bed and give himself the day off. So it's an individualized approach. But usually, self-care is a combination of having the courage to leave your routine and do something different, and the balance of having really healthy, good routines that help you relax when you're overworking, that help you go within when your focus is on the outside world. So yeah, it's going to be disappointing if you ask me questions that are generalization stereotypes, because I have no clue what
Okay.
the human men are up to. I just tune into individuals. Uh,
So tell me
yeah.
about Tarzan.
Tarzan, my first role model. Tarzan, I don't know, those of you who have never heard of him before, but there was a TV show and a comic strip, and Tarzan was this, taking care of his woman, Jane, protecting her. Me hungry, I get animal. He would speak in very black and white, he represents the reptilian side of the brain that's just into survival. So when I wrote the book, one of the early chapters is about black and white thinking, interpreting things as right and wrong, as good or bad, and I call it the inner Tarzan. It's very primitive, basic, needs everything simple. And I am encouraging people to read the book or to listen to the book or to live your life with awareness of when you're in your Tarzan,
Hmm.
when everything's just either black or white, good or bad, because that's not the way life is working. I like to say to my daughter, who's 16 now, Asia, there's absolutely no great, beautiful, wonderful thing that could happen that will not also come with challenges. Like you can win the lottery, and that's great. Never have to worry about money again. But then where do you invest it? And what do you do about your relatives and friends who are asking for money? And there's a lot of responsibility that comes along. You have to grow up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, let's say you meet the man of your dreams and he's just everything on your list. Well, guess what? You may have to give up your cherished routines and independence, and it can shake everything up. It can be really hard to open your heart to love, even if you know it's right.
Hmm.
Because love brings up like a colonic. It just brings up everything unresolved from your childhood.
Yeah.
The more you let love in, the less control you have over your emotions, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But when you've been worshiping control, it's also a very scary thing.
In addition to being a comedian, you're also a songwriter, and as well as an author. I can attest to two out of the three. Whereas I have written a song, and it kind of ties in with what we're talking about. I'm not going to sing it here, but it's called "I'm a Good Man Doing the Best I Can." Do you feel that mindfulness masculinity is sort of along those lines? That that's all we can do is the best we can as men to live and a part of it, of course, is being conscious, not just going through the motions, but really being conscious, consciously aware, consciously in the moment, to be able to do just that.
Yes. And to stop judging whether you're doing your best or not. In other words, I like to come from the assumption that I'm always doing my best. And even though my best can be better, which it probably will be if I forgive myself for not being perfect, even if my best could be better, there are valid reasons why in this moment I'm retreating and couch potato surfing or whatever you call it. And this is my best. And I quickly forgive myself and continue the golden quest of being a better person each day.
Hmm. I know that when I think back on the writing of this song, uh, which right now is the only one I've really produced, um, and I think about the three, I will call them mentors in my life. They were musicians, John Denver, Dan Fogelberg, and Harry Chapin. And one of the lines in the song is, "I wonder what they would say about what it means to be a good man." Because I've read, for example, I've read John's book about his tumultuous life, as well as his successes and so forth. And I'm familiar with Harry and John and Dan as well, and others as well. And I think how challenging it is sometimes to live in this world, even here in the 21st century, where we'd like to think we're a little more enlightened, and a little more aware of how to be, and yet it's still almost it's still a struggle to to be genuine, to be authentic. How do you go about doing that? How do you go about being authentic?
Mm. By being aware of when I'm not authentic and being able to take notes like, okay, right now I just desperately want to be liked, and I'm doing the routine, that the things I know are going to get people to like me. And
Hmm.
so then I go, okay, I must be really afraid right now of just being myself. What am I afraid of? And I just do a little inquiry. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be lovable unless I'm seen as fearless. I'm afraid that if I'm not faking confidence, then I'm going to be rejected. I go
Mm,
through my fears. That's all I do.
mm,
Being mindful doesn't mean being enlightened or perfect or, even confident. It just means that you value awareness of what makes you tick. I like to say that most men know more about what's under their hoods of their cars than what's in the psyche driving their life.
mm. What was the
And that's the
impetus?
purpose of the book.
I was just going to ask,
Is,
what was
is
the
that,
impetus for you in feeling the need, because your career is pretty full. Why add a book to it in this regard? What was it that drove you to this?
well, I was working for a company, I am still working for a company called Man Cave America, and I'm the team life coach. And the boss became aware that I've written books, and he absolutely loved what he read. And he said, Scott, write some essays on masculinity. I've always been curious about certain things about men and masculinity. So I started writing. He gave me some subjects, and it just lit a fire under my belly. And I realized I have a lot to say.
Hmm.
And it all started coming together. And I spent a year writing this book.
There's a comedian, I'm sure you know him, who I think actually helped, shall we call it, the men's movement. Tim Allen, when he would talk about guys getting together, and it wasn't anti-woman, and I know that was a lot of a criticism that he took, but I didn't see it that way. What I saw was it's just like girls' night out. That the gals want to get together, the guys want to get together too. I had a men's group back in 1993. There were only three of us. All right. And we used Iron John, Robert Bly's book, as our primer. And we actually expanded from sitting out in the backyard on the back patio. We started going hiking, and we actually did one hike in the pouring rain, and it was fabulous. It was like at one point you couldn't get any wetter than you were, so it didn't matter anymore whether you walked up to your hips through a stream or not. But they were wonderful times that gave us, all three of us, an opportunity to get away from the rest of the world and just be who we are. We built fires. I remember one fire we built following a storm in the Superstition Mountains, and we lined the hole we dug with rocks, and then we lit the fire in the hole, not realizing the possibility of an explosion.
Boys will be boys
Yes, won't we? Won't.
at any age.
And the rocks did, because of the moisture that was in the cracks and crevices of those rocks that we lined the pit with. Now, they didn't explode and go all over the place. They just kind of cracked and fell apart, fortunately. But we just had, I mean, those times are so memorable. We would climb the different mountains and hills in Phoenix, Squaw Peak, and what else? Different places like that. Papago Park has some trails and so forth in Phoenix, and it was wonderful. What are your thoughts in regards to people starting their own men's group? I mean, you do coaching for men and so forth. Is it strictly men that you work with in that regard?
No,
And okay,
no,
so
more
you work
women
with the
come to
women
see
too.
me. Yeah, but I've been in men's groups on and off since 1996. And when men get together for a purpose other than distraction or
Hmm.
recreation,
Hmm.
and there's a permission to be honest and truthful, and it is so healing and so powerful. We become each other's healers, fathers, mentors, supporters, and cheerleaders, and it's indispensable in my life. And I haven't been in a relationship with a woman for a while, but I made a vow that if I was going to have a woman partner, an intimate relationship, I would find me some freaking men to support me because I need that. I tend to get kind of just a little too feminine in my people pleasing.
Hmm.
There's a fine line between people pleasing, which I believe comes from fear of loss,
Mm.
and service. Like I want to make your life beautiful and wonderful. And that doesn't come from fear, that can come from the heart. And I've had trouble discerning the difference over the course of my relationships. So men's groups are essential. Having men get together without a facilitator is great, but it can devolve if they're not committed to a certain structure. I I was in a men's group where I paid $60 each time we met, and the facilitator made all the difference in the world.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's worth gold to me.
What about the aspect of, and I think this ties into what you're talking about, sort of the people pleaser. Is it the same thing as the fixer? Because that's what we guys like to do. We like to fix things, and I don't mean in terms of repairing. I'm talking about when there are problems with people in the family, your wife, your partner, what have you, and you want to fix them, so to speak.
Yes, you want to contribute, you care, you want to make things better, but often the shadow side of that is the person really isn't wanting to problem solve. They just want to be heard and cared about. And if that's the case, and it's very often with women when they open up emotionally, they don't want your solutions. They want you to hold them and energetically, emotionally, just hold, listen, make nonverbal sounds. Oh, is
Mm.
there anything I can do for you besides listen? And then if they say, yeah, I'd like to problem solve, then boom, Mr. Fix It can put his hat on and get to work. But when you put on that Fix It hat, when he's not invited, watch out because she'll bite that head off.
Yeah.
Is the Fix It is as I say, it's not black and white. Sometimes it comes from love, but very often it comes from I am so uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with myself when I hear you in pain of any kind. I want to make it go away. And here's what most men won't acknowledge. So I can feel better. I need to feel better. And if I find a solution, then I won't have to feel this shaky, uncomfortable fear that you're in pain and I'm responsible for it. And I better do something about it. That's where it comes from.
Mm.
Taking so much responsibility.
And I think that one of the things, the lessons that we have a difficulty with learning, I don't know if it's genetic or not, but, but anyway, is that we can't and we shouldn't because it's not our responsibility. And that's a hard one because I know this happens. You get accused of not caring. Because everybody has their own journey, right? I mean, that goes without saying, I guess. We all have our own journey. And I can't live your life and you can't live mine, whether it's two guys or you have a spouse, right?
Very often, a man's deepest wound, or let's just say negative thought, is I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not making enough. I'm not, whatever. And a woman may have a different wound, and it may be, again, generalizations are not my specialty. I hate them.
Right.
But it could be that a man who is feeling like I'm inadequate, I'm not enough, is attracted to a woman who feels like I'm alone. And when you can just listen and say, do you need a hug? Or, how can I support you? Is listening enough? When you ask questions and when you stand like a tree with your roots in the ground, she takes refuge under that tree and she doesn't feel alone. Once you
Mm.
start fixing her feelings or trying to, it feels to the feminine like you're invalidating what she's feeling. And you're making it so simple, like, oh, why don't you just go to, so she starts to feel more alone and more
Mm.
distant.
We compare ourselves with our fathers a lot too, don't we? I mean, that's another realm. Even if, and again, my father had his dark side, just like every human being does. Um, but we still, as the sons, we have this vision of what we're supposed to be like. And I sometimes think, is this what my dad would do? Or how would dad do this? Which I think is a little different, but can we talk a little bit about that? Or is that too general in that respect? I mean, for example, all right, I'm going to make it more specific.
I'm getting to you. I am getting to you,
Yes,
Richard.
you are. Yes, you are. Uh, what about you? I mean, you're a songwriter, a singer, a speaker, a comedian, a life coach, and on the list goes on of all these different things. Do you still find yourself comparing yourself to either your father or whatever male role models like Tarzan? I mean, do you swing through the
Mhm.
trees on a vine?
I do. I don't necessarily compare myself to my father anymore, but I do get anxious about whether I'm measuring up. And
Hmm.
then I look around and I see people selling far more books, and I see men who are maybe more driven than I
Hmm.
am to do every freaking thing it takes to get yourself out there. And I beat myself up for it. And it's not fun. I mean, I'm moving along slow and steady at my own pace, and most of the time I trust that my pace and my productivity is enough for now. But every once in a while, I look out and I see some rock star, author, celebrity guru, and I'm like, well, I think I should be like him, but I'm holding myself back because I'm lazy. I want to be more like him.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? How do you like my whiny little
I, I,
ten?
I think that's a very, very, very good. Thank you so much for sharing that for us. Did I do
Now
that?
it is it is what I call the inner critic. It's a part of me,
Hmm.
part of my psyche. It's been with me since childhood, in which I look at myself or sometimes other people through a dark pair of glasses that can only see what's wrong, that doesn't see the light and the brilliance and the perfection.
Has
And
Go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Well, I want to broaden this inner critic because a lot of men and women aren't aware that when they feel shitty, it's because deep down they're criticizing themselves.
Hmm.
One time, I decided instead of trying to raise my spirits by feeling and thinking more positive, that I would just dramatize how bad I felt. And I turned the words from I feel pretty, West Side Story, to I feel shitty, oh so shitty. Hello, Kitty, I'm in a foul mood, and self-pity is my one and only attitude. Blah, 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 blah. And I did the song, and I started cracking up. I was singing it in front of a mirror, and I couldn't take my inner critic seriously. after I had finished that song.
By the way, folks, you want to hear more? Go to scottsongs.com. Scottsongs.com. We'll be linked. SCOTTSONGS.com. We'll be linked to that website as well so you can hear more. As a matter of fact, we may hear more as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is a pleasure to have Scott Grace here on the program to talk to us about mindful masculinity. It is available. I already have it in Audible form. Matter of fact, I have the tab open and I go there and I listen for a few minutes and then I'll pause
Oh,
it and I'll go away and I'll come back again later. And it's a lot of fun. And of course, I myself I love Audible because not only of the information that I'm taking in, but I become friends with the narrator and the author at the same time, and I hate for the book to end. I mean, I just finished one that was a dramatized version, and when it was over, I'm going, "Where'd they go? Hey, come back!
oh.
Do
Yeah,
more! Do more!"
you bo you bond with the author. In this case, I read the book and I include over 3 hours of bonus material, mostly songs of mine, little snippets, and sometimes the whole song. And I had so much fun in the studio. I didn't want it to end. And I was throwing improv in there, just sharing my soul and my heart with people. So it's a lot richer than just reading the book or the PDF.
Yeah, well, when I was recording my book, and I'm still in the process, I would think, "Oh, I need to add this other story in there," and I was sharing that thought with someone. They said, "No, no, 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 no. Do not add and update the Amazon. Don't, no, save that for the next edition. Okay, just don't because
Yes.
then you get bogged down, and the book is already it's a small book and it's only 150 some odd pages, and then it's 200, and then it's 200, and the next thing you know, you got War and Peace on your hands, and I don't need that." Scott Grace is my guest, and we're talking about his mindful masculinity, being mindful. That's almost along the lines of a few years back. Everybody was using the word quantum. Everything was quantum, right? Back in the 80s, you had self help, and then that transformed some years later into personal growth. Where do you categorize mindful masculinity? Is there a place for it in that regard? Self help or personal growth? I've been through personal growth programs and they've dealt with loosely the male and the female constructs, but you're dealing primarily with the male, but the women who love them. So, if you were to, if it matters, to categorize it or put it into a place where people would be able to find it if they were saying, I can't remember the title of it. I remember the guy, Scott something, and where would they go to find it?
Uh, the section of the bookstore labeled memoir, comic, self-help, personal growth, spiritual, addiction recovery. I can go on and on. This has been an issue for me, the challenge of
Yeah.
how do I how do I market or promote this? Where do I put it? It is a memoir. It's mostly very personal stories, but it
Hmm.
is self-help. And there are practical things that are suggested. I
Now,
don't know. You
multiple
tell me.
chapters. Yeah, you have multiple chapters there. Do you have songs that go with each can't talk. Uh, with oh, I still can't say it. With the chapters, do you have different songs that go with the chapters of the book to help people
Yeah,
to kind of remember the message of that particular chapter?
yes, absolutely. In fact, I just happen to have my guitar here.
Just happens to be there.
Exactly. So there's chapters for every emotion from anger, grief, joy, and part of this is a part of the book about up leveling your emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
And so just a little snippet of one of the songs, which was really just a prayer for me to open my heart at a time where I was realizing that I can't just open my heart to joy. That if I want an open heart, I have to be willing to feel all of it. and I wanted to, but I was so guarded. And this song, it helped me break on through. Wanna let life touch me. Wanna let life move me deep. Wanna let life stir me from an ancient sleep. Wanna let life touch me. Wanna let life move me deep. Wanna let life stir me from an ancient sleep.
Mm.
May I laugh all my laughter, may I cry all my tears, may I love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears. May I laugh all my laughter and cry all my tears, may I love the rain as deeply as the sun when it clears. Ooh, that's just a little piece of
Beautiful,
it.
beautiful. Speaking of emotions, I find it interesting how I'm watching different programs. People are having interviews. They're telling a story, and all of a sudden, tears well up in their eyes. And usually, the first words that come out of their mouth are, "Oh, I'm sorry," or they want to excuse it. And of course, then I kind of respond to what I'm watching, going, "Would you say the same words if you laughed or if you were excited? Don't apologize for crying." I remember after my father's passing, I was in the shower and I just bawled at the passing of my dad. And, it probably went on for 5, 10 minutes, with my dear friend of 53 years. He was my best friend through grade school, high school, college, and he passed away May 1st, 2023. And I haven't cried over him at all because every time I think about him, I laugh because we had so much fun together. We had all kind. I'm sure you have friends that there are certain phrases that the two of you will remember, and a certain incident will happen out there, and the two of you will say that same phrase all at the same time, which then triggers another one. Jinx, you owe me a Coke. Humor. How important is it in being masculine, mindfully masculine?
Well, I see humor as it could be vindictive, it could be judgmental. That's not the kind of humor I'm about. But I love it when humor helps someone feel safer to look at themselves, to look at. I usually do a lot of self-deprecating humor where I reveal myself in funny ways, and then people in the audience or who are reading the book, that it makes it easier for them to go, oh yeah, nobody's perfect. I can own that. I do that too. It's all right. It
Yeah.
makes it all right.
I was born legally blind. I was that way until 36 when I got a lens implant. And I would used to tell this joke. I don't know that it's necessarily self deprecating, as more of an observation. That my mother, as I was a child growing up, she had curtains in almost every room except mine and my brother's. And because I was born and raised in Phoenix, I was a Phoenician blind. Um, it seems to me that a lot of times too, though, humor is also used to deflect. We will try
Yes.
to make jokes because we don't really want to deal with the core of who we really are.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that in terms of, if we recognize it, they say that's the first step. Are
Yes.
is there a something that you've come up with that helps you? Because again, I mean, you're a comedian. You yes, self-deprecating. I understand that. But at the same time, I would think that there are times when, as open as you are, there must be moments when it's like you start to just try to be funny because you don't really want to talk about something, or is that not in your repertoire, that you are this open person and you don't need to use humor to deflect?
hmm hmm Well, I mean, I've come a long way with this. I I used to be a chronic deflector, and now I'm an occasional social deflector.
Hmm.
But step number one is awareness, and that very often is very difficult to look at your self defense mechanisms, especially when your defense mechanisms are making you money and are really appreciated on the
Yeah.
stage. But
Mhm.
the second step is to turn compassion towards yourself and say, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of in this moment? If
Mm.
I was really honest with this other person, or if I was honest with myself about what I was feeling, what would be what is the humor trying to hide from, to
Mm.
protect me from?
Mm.
Usually it's just insecurity or the fear that I'm not enough or that being me won't be enough. It won't keep people around or interested or entertained.
That's even a question that I have raised. I had a period of time in 2016 where I got sucked into the political thing, and I took me 6 months to get unsucked. And I went through this process where the first step that I had to take, and my intuition was really part of this, and I want to talk to you about that, that was saying you have to say it out loud. You cannot just say it in your head. And I had to say, thank you, teacher, for teaching me how not to be. But it was actually the third step following, I forgive myself for getting dragged into this quagmire. The third step was asking the question from a pure, honest human heart. What is it that you, the person that I personally have this challenge with, what is it that you're so afraid of that makes you act and behave this way and speak this way? I'm not wanting you to change. I just want to understand so I can put that away and move on with my life. Um, that seems to be a process that a lot of us in this country, especially, but it's around the world, I'm sure, have difficulty with recognizing that not only are we teachers and students of and for one another, but that each one of us has fears. And if we recognize that each one of us does have fears, I don't know, maybe that can make it a little easier for us as individuals to recognize that, hey, we kind of are all the same. We are connected and that we have an effect one to the other.
I agree. If we all had loudspeakers broadcasting to the world everything that we're thinking, and we can hear everybody's thoughts, maybe the first reaction would be horror. And then after you sample some people's thoughts and you realize that they're all just as neurotic as you are, probably we would all just start laughing our asses off.
Mm, I think you're
And
right.
yes, we would feel less alone.
I think you're right. So, talk to us a little bit about some of these men's groups. Are you still holding any men's groups today? Is that still part of your life?
No,
Okay.
no, it could be if a group of men called me and said, "Hey, let's do something," but I don't have the kind of passion for it to initiate it on myself.
And here's another question that you may or may not want to answer. What are your thoughts about some of the people that have been around in the men's, we'll call it the men's movement over the decades? I'm 65 and I've seen a lot of come and go. Some who have been unofficially part of helping men to grow, others more officially. People kind of like Robert Bly, who wrote Iron John, which was our metaphysical primer in our men's group. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Well, I've been around the block as well, and I did a men's initiation, the New Warrior,
Mhm.
in 1996. We borrowed from uh, a number of mentors, Robert Bly being one of them. And what I've watched is that over time, um, new medicine, new techniques, new ways of doing this work have evolved. And so everybody's been helpful. And then they pass the baton on to the next generation. And For instance, John Gray, men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Hmm.
Back in the 80s, that was really important to emphasize our differences and learn how to respect our differences and work with our differences. But it was still at a time where men were men and women were women. Now, I believe that the next step in our evolution is for men to develop the right side of their brains and for women to be also developing what hasn't been developed within themselves so that we become more whole brained, so that more and more men can cry when they read about what's going on in the Amazon rainforest or LA, because when you're in touch with compassion and connection, then you grieve. You don't just say, "Oh, that's not me. Thank God." That's the illusion that we're growing out of, is that we're separate beings
Hmm.
and that I can get my slice of the pie whether or not you are happy. I can be successful at somebody's expense or Mother Earth's expense. And as men open up their intuitive, their feminine, their yin energy, that no longer makes sense.
Mm.
The
Mm.
raping and pillaging of Mother Earth and the domination that we've done for thousands of years in terms of keeping women down just no longer makes sense. And so it's it's a new time, and I believe that my book represents the latest support for 21st century men.
And that book is Mindful Masculinity. Scott Grace, my guest, and I'm Richard Dugan, and this is Tell Me Your Story. We're talking with Scott Grace, and Scott has a website, scottsongs.com. Hope you'll go there and listen to some of the work that he's done. He's on YouTube. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. Like they used to say about Elvis. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. Um, I want to talk to you about the spiritual aspects. I would even use the metaphysical, beyond the physical aspects of masculinity, because it seems to me that I know that there's been a lot made by some folks who want us to go back to the way things used to be, like, oh, I don't know, in the 50s. And in addition to, it wasn't so great for a lot of people in the 50s. Number one. Number two, you can't go back. As REM said, it's the end of the world as you know it, every minute of every hour of every day. And so I want to talk a little bit about, or have you talk a little bit about, the spiritual aspects of mindful masculinity and how important having an inner life, listening to that still small voice or your intuition, whatever else you want to call it, and even for that matter, not necessarily rubbing against the atheists. Don't get me wrong. I've had atheists on the program, and they've been pretty doggone spiritual from my perspective. But having some kind of grounding.
That's a great word, because spirituality can ground us and
Mhm.
give us a purpose bigger than our ego's goals. Hey, I want to get married, I want to have this and spirituality is realizing that we're all interconnected and that there's something you and I don't understand and will never understand that has put all this together, matter and stars in the sky and an infinite universe and synchronicities that happen to all of us. There's something going on here, and you don't have to call it God, but to recognize that whatever you call it, it's bigger than you, and it
Mhm.
has plans and it has guidance for you. And if you are just following your own plan, it's going to fall and it's going to fail, and you're going to find yourself on your knees. And it's most people who are on their knees who find their spirituality, who venture into that meditation studio in between the Starbucks and whatever. So we got to get humbled before spirituality even becomes attractive.
Mm. Another aspect of that that we talked with several guests about this aspect of love and unconditional love. Now, some people say it doesn't exist. You can't have unconditional love. And I say, I think you can when you have no conditions on taking care of someone, on caring for someone for that matter. You know, and you do it regardless of. Do you feel that in your book, Mindful Masculinity, that we need to learn how to express as best we can unconditional love for our specific, first of all, for ourselves? I mean, you kind of addressed that a little bit earlier, but we refer to it as unconditional love. And I know that in Corinthians it gives the laundry list of what love is. What are your perspectives on love and unconditional love?
Well, I am here to learn about this stuff. I am here to release the judgments that prevent me from understanding, expressing, and receiving unconditional love. And there's layers of judgment. And the more I let the sun, the light, shine upon the layers, the more I become aware of the judgments that hold me back from unconditional love. And yeah, it starts with self. So I write a lot about the inner critic because the ongoing commentary that we have about our performance, it's like we're giving ourselves a performance test 24/7, and it's usually we're very poor, like we
Hmm.
get a D minus or whatever. Uh, it's becoming conscious of that inner critic that helps us connect to a very natural, very uh, effortless flow of love. Love is easy. It's uncovering the blocks to love. That's the journey. And
Mm.
so I try to do it through humor and in the book, lots of poetry, because one of my altered egos is called the spiritual Dr. Seuss. So to get men and women more aware of their inner critic, the running commentary, I share this in the book. The critic will travel with you on this earth and be your companion for worse or worse. It pretends it's your friend, your bestest amigo, and it pours on the guilt. That's the critical ego. It's there to protect you, to help you feel strong. So it has to remind you you're doing it wrong. You're weak and you're lazy and you don't have a clue. That's your drill sergeant critic trying to motivate you. Your critic wants you to be all you can be. So it gives you these pep talks all day and for free. Oh, the places you'll go and the guilt trips you'll travel as the critic plays judge and bangs down on its gavel. But you always can get some relief from your shame by projecting it onto the others you'll blame. Because that is the critic at its beastiest best. It nurses its grievances close to its chest. Republicans, liberals, your parents, your ex. The world is just teeming with folks to correct. If only those fools could conform to your ways, you could get on with life without further delays.
Mm.
Now, that's a 7-minute poem. I just shared the very beginning
Hmm.
in the interest of time. But I do want to give you a taste of how music and poetry
Hmm.
are a part of how I teach and how I entertain while getting these points deep down where they belong, way past the intellect.
Well, there's another part too that I want you to talk about as well, but you've also written a couple of other books. Teach Me How to Love and Oh, the Places Your Ego Will Go. And then there's one that's rather timely, I think, that there might be some folks who are going, why? Why did he write this? How to evolve during the Trump experience, whether humanity joins you or not? Um, I want to ask you the question because of your prolific writings there. And I say prolific because I've written one, and at least as far as this list is concerned, I see four. So you're three up on me. So that's prolific. The question is, from your perspective as a comedian and a songwriter, as well as a writer and a speaker, how important are words? Because the phrase that I use over and over again is words have power. People don't choose the words that they choose unless they're out to get something. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but the words have power. Talk to us about that.
Are you? Yeah. Yes. And in one respect, our word is our wand. We
Hmm.
are creating universes with each sentence. But on the other sense, looking at it differently, it's the tone and the intention. I remember when I had a dog, and I was experimenting with this when I was a kid. My dog's name was Daiquiri, and I would say, Daiquiri, I hate your guts. And he would just start wagging its tail and coming. And and then I would say, Daiquiri, I love you. And it would growl, you know. So that, we respond to vibrations and intentions even more than words. So that's just another thing to add to the conversation. But
Hmm.
what does this have to do with that book about Donald Trump?
Well, that's in the list here, and you wrote it, correct? You
It
wrote
had
that book.
words.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Why did you write it?
Uh, I wanted to reinforce in myself and in others that whatever is happening is going to help us grow. When our intention is to grow, then there really is no, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is a tragedy. This is anything that comes into your awareness can be your guru.
Hmm.
And in the back of the book, let's see if I can remember, I wrote, Donald Trump is not a problem to be solved. He's an in your face wake up call, a calling to evolve.
Mm, I like that.
And it goes on. Yeah. At the end of the poem, I remember the last part, it says, Donald might be acting like an insensitive jerk, but he won't continue to jerk your chain because you'll have discovered how to remain in your peaceful, powerful, and playful center where love and peace and immigrants can enter.
I love the integration. That's beautiful.
You
That's
betcha.
beautiful.
And there's some practical stuff in that.
Yeah.
There's 12 steps for surviving and even thriving a Trump presidency. And it's 12 steps of what you can do attitudinally that help you stay in the president of your own United States of consciousness.
Hmm.
You are presiding over your consciousness. And whoever's president, I'm not saying is unimportant, but when you get that you govern your psyche, then
Hmm.
it's you can just not take it so seriously
Yeah.
what's going on out there.
There's another wonderful line I heard from a television program, and it kind of goes like this. I am not going to allow someone else, and you can name whoever you want, to live rent free up here. All right. I'm not going to allow someone to live rent free in
Yeah.
my head. And
Yes.
I think that's a
And
beautiful
when
thing.
I hate somebody, when I hate somebody,
Hmm.
when I spend a lot of emotional energy focused on what somebody has done that I don't like, they are living rent free in my head.
Exactly. Exactly. And I wish it was possible for us to charge rent up there. When you are putting together your comedy, you write your own comedic material.
Absolutely.
then
Yes.
how do you go about the process of selecting? Because you did talk about the kinds of humor that you don't use, but then again, other types of humor that you do use. How do you go about creating these humorous things? Is it from observations from the world?
How about we just do it right now?
Oh, okay.
Improv, musical improv.
Here we go again.
And then I would ask that we begin to wrap it up because I have to pee.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then I would ask that we wrap it up because I have a podcast 20 minutes and I'd like to prepare for it.
You got it. You got it.
Richard Dugan said to me, how do you write your comedy? Could it just simply be silly spontaneity? I don't know, I don't sit and try to write a thing. I just start to giggle and I pick up my guitar and sing like a playful child.
Mm.
Sing and rhyme and then I smile. Then a theme starts showing itself to my brain, and I start writing things down. And soon I have a skit, I have a song, I have a poem, and it's all wrong. And then I have to craft it and forgive it and polish it to death. That's why I do improv, so God can do the rest. I let it all hang like a big bang that creates a universe. And I befriend my egos, choruses and verses. I know this could be better or worses. So I have no strategy. For
Ah.
writing comedy, I just see life in a funny light. And then I just feel motivated to go and celebrate it. Pick up my pen and simply write.
Excellent. Scott Grace, my guest, and this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and we are coming to the end of our conversation with our special guest here on the program, Scott Grace. Scott Grace has a website, and it is scottsongs.com. Hope you'll go there. The book, Mindful Masculinity. I hope you'll get a copy of it. I really hope that you'll actually get the Audible. It's available as well, so please do so. Scott, first of all, thank you so much for being with us here on the program. This has been a lot of fun and fascinating, and I hope that we get a chance to talk again very soon.
Thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure. I'd love to talk to you again. So let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Finally, I have three final questions I ask all of my guests. I'll make them brief, and they are one right after the other. Who is Scott Grace?
An angel in training,
What gets you up in the morning?
needing to pee.
And finally, what was your best day?
So far, it's today.
Wonderful. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. And I thank you for joining us here on Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.